Hello, everyone. So I'm Christine, the project coordinator for Green Hustle, and this is the Our Future panel. So we've got the young hustlers. Do you guys want to say hello?
Hello.
Hello.
And we have the Wilder Future bunch. Do you guys want to say hello and more apt introduction? So that would be Mia and Indy.
Oh yeah, so we're from Keeping It Wild, a youth group that's connected to Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust. We run our own nature reserve with Thorpe Meadow, and we try and have done lots of campaigns towards climate change. Yeah.
So next to me, I don't know if they can see you on camera, Ben. Come closer.
Hi, I'm Ben Felstead. So I run YMCA Digital, which is creative arts and digital media out of the NGY MySpace building. I'm here because we're running a project called We Are the Change, which connects artists and digital media experts with environmental specialists to run workshops for young people. So they're getting involved in film, photography, blogging, alongside learning about environmental issues. And yeah, so that's, and we're hosting our thing from our space at YMCA Digital. So yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourselves as well for everyone?
I'm Sally Longford. I'm Deputy Leader of the Council. I'm responsible for energy, environment and other stuff.
Wonderful. Could you tell us what you're working on now currently?
I'm working on the carbon neutral 2028. That's one of my major projects. I'm also responsible for clean air in the city and the switch to electric vehicles and those sorts of things, plus biodiversity policy. So yeah, and waste, recycling, all that stuff as well, massive amount of work. But for the last few months, unfortunately, there has been a little item of a global pandemic that I'm also responsible for managing. So that's taken my eye off the ball somewhat, but thankfully there's lots of other people doing lots of work as well. So.
Wonderful, thank you. Alma, do you want to say hello as well, please?
Hello, I'm Alma from City Arts. We're based in Hockley. I don't know if some of you may know City Arts as an organisation. We've been part of the city as an organisation for over 40 years. I've been delivering workshops for 15 years of that time, mainly with young people. So that's my work, basically all around young people, but also work with lots of different community groups as well. So it's not just young people. But we're based in Hockley, for those who don't know, not far from, right next to Desi Downtown Restaurant, for those who know that one, near the Carousel, near Snedden Market. That's it.
And Paul. Hello.
Yeah, hiya. Paul, Chief Exec of the Notts Wildlife Trust and close neighbour of Alma's, based on Snedden Market. So yeah, so that's who I am.
Could you tell us what the Wildlife Trust is doing these days?
Trying to save the world and trying to get as many people as possible taking action for wildlife in Nottinghamshire. Really trying to inspire people with wildlife and what it means for individuals, for our health and well-being, and also raise awareness of the ecological crisis and climate crisis that we're facing, to get as many people as possible taking action to try and address kind of massive species decline and potentially catastrophic climate change. So nothing major on the agenda other than that, really.
That sounds, yeah, just teeny tiny. Of course. So we have our young hustlers here.
Yeah, we're young hustlers. We were set up to help adults and other people understand what young people are thinking of the world nowadays and what we want to change. So since January, we've been doing podcasts every month, talking about climate change and Black Lives Matter and all the other smaller and bigger things that that we feel affect us and we want to change in the future.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Indy.
Yeah, so well, I mean, I volunteer with under Paul and the Nottingham Wildlife Trust, as well as the RSPB and the VTO, pretty much with the same aim as the Wildlife Trust, trying to save nature, doing surveys, and along with Mia, we're, like Mia said, part of the Keeping It Wild Nottingham Wildlife Trust youth team, which has their own little nature reserve, like Mia said, in Woodford Meadow, that we help maintain in Nottingham. So yeah, do some good stuff.
Fabulous. Nerisse, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, I'm Nerisse. I'm part of the Young Hustlers as well. Yeah.
She's having some technical trouble, but she is here with us. Thank you for being here, Nerisse. So now that we've got our esteemed panel, I know people have prepared questions they would like to ask. So, Felix, would you like to start?
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. And who are you asking this question to?
I think probably more to Paul and Sally, if that's all right. So plants and wildlife habitats get removed to build roads and buildings and projects, which is obviously damaging to wildlife and the species, at-risk species. And sometimes overgrown areas are cut down into just lawns or even to make parks, make them look nicer, which is silly because we should be trying to rewild those areas now. So is there any plans to, or ways that you're thinking of helping the animals that habitats and homes have been destroyed to make roads and tram tracks and buildings, and how would you go about that?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's something that obviously I'm very concerned about. Earlier, when we in 2019 we made a pledge to make Nottingham a bee-friendly city, and you know, that's a symbolic sort of act, if you like, which involves creating more wildlife habitats generally, not just bees, but it's a nice thing to badge it on. So we're currently in the process of identifying areas in every part of the city which will be where wildlife will be encouraged and where we will stop that mowing. I'm trying to avoid bowling green situations unless they're actually a bowling green anywhere in the city, really. So you'll have noticed if you travel around the city, you'll have noticed that things like the central reservation of the ring road is no longer mown. Lockdown, people naturally, because we just weren't doing any mowing. Well, it was on the one hand that we weren't actually doing much mowing, but it was also the fact that we'd already planned to do that. We've also identified areas in the verge areas and things like that. And I feel I'm pushing it as much as I can, believe me. Around the edges of places and parks are needed to be. I'm trying to get them not to be mown and to actively encourage more diversity. So we cleared the grass from some areas in various patches, and they've taken really well, and they've been very well received. I mean, there are people who do think that we should definitely have lots of nice lawn type areas in the public realm, but I'm not one of them. And we're also planting lots of trees, and it's the City Council's policy that if you chop down a tree for any reason, and I'm getting to grips with that. So when anybody asks for a tree to be chopped down, I expect to be consulted these days, and if it's not actually necessary, pushing back on every tree felling that happens. But if it does have to be chopped down, then there is a PC that's been chopped down. In city, I suggest that you ask your local councillor where the 2 trees are to be planted, which to replace it. because I know for a fact that sometimes they're not always obvious. So I'd be more than happy to hear about them, and you're welcome to get in touch with me. It's difficult when there's new developments and things, as you say, like tram line extensions and those sorts of things, because they don't always go through areas which are brownfield sites where, you know, and that you can cause disruption. Provide more compensation for the places that you've lost, and that is absolutely my aim. And the biodiversity is a major part of our carbon neutral 2028 action plan. So, you know, if you identify places in the city which you think are council responsibility and things aren't being done right, then I encourage you to email me and let me know.
Thank you.
Shall I chip in as well? Because Felix asked, I think. So yes, I guess from our perspective as a trust, we're just really conscious of the fact that 41% of recorded species are in decline, potentially with some facing extinction. So we're really alarmed by that, and have obviously been fighting for many years to make sure to protect places, which we've called nature reserves. But that was always an emergency measure, really. We knew that we now had to put more back, and not just settle for what we've managed to protect. So we've been talking quite a lot recently about nature recovery networks. So this is where we're looking at all the various habitat that we've got left and considering those as really important kind of nodes on a network, and looking at how you can connect some of those places together, look at how you create routes between, corridors between, stepping stones between, to allow wildlife to move around. But that means that we actually need to go beyond just protecting what we've got and putting more habitat back. So for every development that we're involved in and consulted on, we're pushing the construction company or pushing the housing developer to first of all avoid any damage in the first place, and then to try and reduce that where possible if it's unavoidable, and then actually to put more habitat back and more value for wildlife back than they've destroyed. And I think as part of that, we need to be very clear that that's a really important public demand, that there are people that are really love wildlife. They're really concerned about the loss of wildlife. So actually for those businesses to build that road, to build those houses, they've got a public duty and a moral duty to actually put wildlife back and not just simply leave the world in a worse state than they found it. So we work quite a lot in the planning system. So we're consulted by developers and working closely with local authorities to provide ecological advice on thousands of planning applications, to make sure that they're avoiding that damage to wildlife, and really pushing for there to be an overall gain for wildlife through any development. And that's now been supported by the government and their proposed environment bill, which is due to come back to Parliament this later session, kind of autumn winter parliamentary session. So a number of Keeping It Wild crew and I went down to London, and we've been, so Indy and others, we've been down to London lobbying the MPs, pushing them on the environment bill and making sure it's as strong as it possibly can be, because it's only once we've got these things underpinned by law where people actually have a legal duty to put wildlife back that we'll really make serious inroads. Because everything that Sally's talked about is fantastic and they're doing a great job, but a lot of it is also working sometimes against the tide of other things that are happening.
Yeah, I can say that, but it was the legislation, or at the moment is it just kind of you're offering advice at the moment, you know, and then hopefully people go along with it.
Well, there's policy, and obviously the local authorities are setting policy, and that's got quite a lot of strength. And there are various other environmental laws about protection of species, protection of habitats, and other things. But there's no legal duty on anyone to put more wildlife back than when you found it. So there's no legal underpinning for that at the moment, and that's what we're looking for in this environment bill, amongst many things, because the environment bill will also cover water quality, air quality, and various other things as well. So it's potentially quite, well, it's a once in a generation opportunity, I'd say, to get a really strong environment bill, because these kind of bills only come around every 20, 25 years. So if we miss the boat on this one, then we're going to be in serious trouble when we know we've only got 10 years to really turn around the kind of ecological declines that we're seeing. So we can't wait another 25 years for the next environment bill if this one fails to deliver.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Felix, for that question.
Wonderful, thank you, Felix. So Alma, we wanted to ask a question about art and sustainability. I know Felix had a question about Tetra Paks, was it, Felix?
Oh, I've gone. Oh, yes.
Artist that works with Hockley Hustle who makes art out of Tetra Paks as a way of upcycling and just getting rid of that waste. So I don't, Felix, you want to expand more?
On the Tetra Paks?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I've noticed that Nottingham doesn't recycle Tetra Pak. You know, things that custard comes in, and some waters and milkshakes, and some places do offer Tetra Pak recycling. And I've seen that there is some places in Nottingham that you can take it to be recycled, but I'm wondering why it's not as recycled as a whole thing, for easy to do for everyone, and because that will be a good step into recycling more.
And also, are there creative ways to utilize?
Yeah.
Like in landfill, but be reused.
Yeah.
I can answer.
Yeah, no, it's quite an interesting question, because I am aware that we don't recycle Tetra Paks in Nottingham at the moment. Quite a few years ago, we did a project called Trash to Treasure, when we worked with the council to kind of put lots of things in kind of creative ways, and in a creative exhibition at Broadmarsh to look at how to recycle lots of household items into new purposed built items that people can use at home, which is a very, very interesting project. But there are far and few of those projects, I'm afraid. Obviously, there are some artists that do work with recycled materials. We try ourselves to try and use recycled materials when possible. It's not always possible, but we can do so when we are able to do a project around that. Some of our carnival costumes and puppets and so forth are made from recyclable materials. Not always, because obviously making new puppets, new costumes, you're unable to do that. But yeah, when possible, they can be reused in such a way that artists can make products to then sell and people can buy them. So there's so many things now on YouTube as well that, you know, things that you're able to kind of just see on how to recycle things like that yourselves at home. So it's a really nice way to just kind of be proactive on that yourself. I know quite a few artists who who carry their own things that they've made themselves and made from Tetra Paks, like purses and so forth. So yeah, it's kind of a very interesting question. Sometimes it's not always possible, but I know the council are doing their utmost to try and make sure that most of our waste is recyclable. But yeah, I'm aware that there's other avenues to explore creatively.
Yeah.
Can I come in there? The Tetra Paks are a bit of a nightmare to recycle, but there are a couple of places where there are Tetra Pak recycling banks in the city. One's at Woodthorpe Park and the other's at Sainsbury's on Castle Marina. But in general, the recycling and waste disposal operations are being reviewed at the moment. The whole review process got delayed because of COVID, but we were in the process of looking at how we recycle and what we recycle and what we collect and how it's managed just before lockdown. And one of the things that is hopefully going to change quite soon is that we're going to be recycling. We're going to be collecting food waste for recycling, which is a major problem. Food waste is a huge, obviously not a good thing, and can be used for waste for energy production So I'm hoping that very soon we're collecting food waste, but we're reviewing all the other things that we collect as well, and hopefully Tetra Packs, there will be more opportunities to recycle in the future.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, Indy, or is it Mia? You've got your mic on.
Oh yeah, okay, I'll go. So older generations seem to care very little about the issue of climate change, which in my opinion is the biggest issue we face today. Do you think it's worth it for our generation to protest and ask current leaders to do something, or should we instead be focusing on getting into positions of power ourselves?
Who wants to go? I'll go. Both.
I was just going to say the same thing. Both, definitely.
Yeah, I'd say both. I think, I mean, I think you guys are great examples of that. You're obviously bright, articulate, passionate, care, and I think you will make great leaders. You already are. So, so I think absolutely try your absolute bestest to get to positions of influence. But I think also kind of being aware that in those positions of influence, that you've also got other pressures. I mean, Sally's a great ambassador, but she's got lots of other things to weigh up, and other colleagues that have got other priorities. So I think actually being on the outside sometimes is as equally powerful and influential as being on the inside. So, so I think I'd say both. I think develop your skills, develop your arguments, and stick to it. And I think if, depending on which route becomes available to you, I'd say follow it with that same passion. Because actually having lots of power doesn't mean you can make lots of things happen.
Yeah, I also think sorry, I was just going to say on the digital side, Mia, is you as the younger generation know digital media better than the older generation. So in fact, you guys have the power because you have the platform, which you understand more. And that's why we think it's important at YMCA to do your activism alongside blogging and digital media stuff, because that's how you get your voice heard, which not all, but a lot of the older generations aren't as connected to digital media like young people are. So I think digital media and social media is a big platform for the younger generations as well. That's my 50 pence.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I think it's really important that people do get educate and learn about what the threats to society and to the environment are. And there's many ways that you can work to improve things, not just by campaigning, but through your career choices, and whether that is following a political role or becoming involved in an environmental lobby group, or whether it's working as an educationalist, or as in research, or working in an active way with young people or with older people. There are all sorts of ways of contributing to campaigning without necessarily becoming either a politician or a campaigner. You can do all of it and enjoy your varied life in the meantime. So, you know, I'm an old person. I used to be mainly a campaigner, and I was a geography teacher. So obviously I spent a lot of time trying to persuade people to take an interest in the environment. And many of those people are now doing jobs in things like the Wildlife Trust and Environment Agency and other things. And some of them have become geography teachers. So, you know, there's all sorts of ways that you can make a contribution. And I became a politician late in life, and I brought that environmental passion that I've had into my politics. So I'm a Labour politician, and I care very much about society and making people's lives better, creating a more equal and fair society. But I think the environment is a huge part of that. If we don't tackle the environmental issues that we're facing, we can't have a good life for the future. And so, you know, that's what drives me, and that's why I'm so keen to press ahead with our 2028 vision, because I think it's the only way that we can protect people in the city from the worst excesses of climate change.
Wonderful, thank you, Sally. I think Alma had something to add there.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo really what was said, really. I think you shouldn't underestimate your influence as young people, because it's really, really important. You know, I remember as a young person being probably the only person in my classroom. This is back in the 80s, so I am older than that I look. But I remember having, you know, campaigning quite a lot in school just to get my friends to recycle and to look at those things, and actually influencing a lot of my friends by doing so with gentle persuasion. Of course, we didn't have the digital medium in those days, but I would get rather cross. But I think that's important. You shouldn't underestimate the power that you have now in the digital medium. Again, like Paul was saying, you know, the career choices that you make in the future are really important as well. I work in the creative industry. I have done so for 15 years, but I use some of that. You know, it's not always about environmental choices that we make at City Arts, but you know, we are influenced by it as well, so we try to be quite proactive with it. But yeah, just if you continue this path now, how you're doing, you're going to do quite well regardless what job choices you have.
Wonderful. So
Great, thank you.
From you yet?
Is that me, sorry?
Please.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So my question is probably to anyone who sees fit to answer it, really, but here it is. Air pollution is responsible for more than 30,000 premature yearly deaths in the UK. It also exacerbates pre-existing conditions. As regards to the natural world, it poisons waterways and soils. Toxic chemicals cause devastating health conditions in wildlife, including reduced reproduction. How will the climate neutral 2028 plan help in all these areas? Because you've got to say, we do have a lot of work to do to turn things around, if that is even possible anymore.
Well, it obviously, as you say, it's a huge problem, and there's only so much that we can actually do in the city itself to affect the quality of our air, because much of the pollution that affects the city is actually from outside of the city. So the carbon neutral 2028 plan has a lot of stuff in it about tree planting and biodiversity and all that stuff, which can contribute hugely to better air quality. There's also the drive to encourage more active travel, walking and cycling rather than cars, and to make the switch to electric vehicles more easy and that sort of thing. And there are all sorts of measures within it, but really, to make a huge difference, a huge impact on air quality, you've got to have national policy which will impact on the sorts of choices, for example, that agriculture makes about their chemical usage and how they farm, and industry way away from us, upstream of us, which affects the air quality that comes to us, that we can't have much influence over. So national policy, and if you know, in the bigger, wider world, international policy is what you need to make a huge impact on air quality. But we can make a difference, there's no doubt, because some people travel very far from the localised air quality. And since we've changed some of our buses, for example, to biogas and electric, and we've had more electric vehicles, and there's been more cycling, and all these things have contributed to us having better air quality than most other cities. And you know, we were of all the cities in the UK that were destined to have a clean air zone, which would have involved charging all the vehicles to come into the city. We haven't had to do that because our air quality is already much better than most other cities and is improving still. And that's because we've generally got a well-used public transport system, the tram, the clean buses, those sorts of things. And environmentalists will say to me, well, shouldn't we have a clean air zone anyway? Well, not necessarily, because if we can clean up our air without causing those sorts of impacts on the economy and on local people, then so much the better. That's my aim, is to clean up the air and to benefit local people without actually making them pay any extra. Lots of people already pay to drive into the city centre for work. If you come into the city centre to work or into the city to work, you have to pay for your parking space, whether it be in your company car park or in another car park or on the street. There are very few places where you can park for free in the city. So people that drive in and cause the pollution are generally paying anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I will also say that the CN 2028 plan does sound really good, and thank you for explaining it to me. So please keep that up, because it's really positive and we really need that. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. So we are running out of time. So we've got time for one more question from Nerisse.
Hi. I think this is to everyone. I'm not really sure. But how do you think that we could make litter picking a more natural occasion, so it's more commonly done and we can get involved as a community, rather than just a few people trying to do it for the whole city?
I think, first of all, the big thing for me is the behaviour change to stop people dropping the damn litter in the first place. I think I've actually noticed, kind of going around the city, that there's actually not a huge amount of litter that I've seen in places, in pockets. But I think the big thing for me that I find most upsetting is people driving along throwing things out of their car window. Because you're obviously going somewhere, so, and wherever you're going has probably got a bin, so just keep it in the car and do that. I suppose what fills me with some hope is that actually people do mobilise around litter picking. I know we're a landlocked county, but kind of beach cleans are a big thing in other kind of coastal towns and cities. I think people do mobilise around that because there's a real civic pride. There's kind of individuals who are kind of keen to kind of clean up the area. So maybe calling it a litter pick, maybe calling it something else, get the marketeers and the branding people on it to make it sound more fun. But I think also just calling out bad behaviour. I think we've all got a responsibility when we're walking around. If we see someone kind of throw something out of the window or drop it, I know it's difficult sometimes, you don't want to get into an altercation, but just most of the time I think it's just calling out that behaviour in one way or the other.
As far as litter goes, we do have this Clean Champions scheme where you can get yourself, the council will provide you with gloves, a high-vis jacket and and a litter picker. And there are people in lots of parts of the city. I think we've got about 70 or 80 people that do it. They go and do their own bit of street or whatever. But there's also lots of people who are members of friends of groups, so friends of Woollerton Park or Woodthorpe Park or the Arboretum or whatever, and they go round on regular occasions and do litter picks. So there are lots of people doing litter picks, but they do tend to be of a certain age, I have to say, in the main. So it'd be really great if some younger people could get involved and bring some vitality and a slightly different vibe to the whole thing. I think would be brilliant. So any ideas and suggestions you've got about how you might make it more attractive to younger people, I think would be brilliant.
I'm just about to say that I saw it was on this parenting program. It was like Choose the Best Parent. And I saw there were little kids. They're about 4, I think. And they took them out for. They said one thing they do ever since they were little and growing up is taking them out with grabbers and gloves and bags with their friends, and they're only like 4 or 5, and they loved doing it as like an activity going out. because it's weird because when I was watching it, I was like, I can see why they like it, because they're walking around with their parents and their friends, and they're like having competitions. You can fill the bag up, and they've got grabbers, which are always fun when you fall. You can, you know what I mean. So I just thought that was really nice. So I think that's a good thing to encourage.
But pride as well in your local environment, which is I think should be encouraged to everybody to take pride.
Just really like the idea of little kids with little tickets. I thought that was really cute.
So Paul, Alma, Sally, Mia, Indy, Felix, Ben, and Nerisse, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later,
It's been
guys.
really- Thanks very much. Thank you.